you kind of fix on how do you achieve all of these, and then that really flows into which are the target markets or segments that you're targeting, what's the mix of products that you might want to have. You would want to achieve this particular, matrix. So if it is, for example, we looked at entering the mass market product in case of Xyometer, if we are looking at survival of an organization at a corporate level. So in that particular thing, you are possibly looking at standardizing products and coming out with a cheaper product line. So this flows into your entire, I guess the market positioning, if you want to call it, on how do you would want to kind of play the market positioning, and then you choose whether you would want to focus on innovation, or would you want to be a fast second. So if I am a mobile phone brand entering into the market right now, and if my potential goal is survival and possibly look to growth, I will never kind of want to invest my resources in innovation. I would like to become a follower and a fast follower, and I would literally follow an organization which has heavy R&D budgets to be able to work on those innovations, and to be able to kind of pick that up, tweak it, and replicate it in certain markets which I would want to be targeting. So
Yes, sir.
your corporate objectives define your marketing strategy, or your the the market positioning as such, which then kind of flows into order qualifiers and winners. That's something that we will look at in the future, but it's really what are some of the threshold features that your organization should provide to be able to that should be the bare minimum. And order winners are typically when you will be able to focus on you will be able to attract those customers in your target market through that particular thing. And once you've kind of defined what your order qualifiers are and what your order winners are, is when you kind of move into making those choices in terms of processes, in terms of design, in terms of having that operational infrastructure in place to be able to flow through that. So this is really what Hill said. And while it's a great framework and it's a great tool, I think it's not all encompassing, because once you are actually in the real world, a lot of these are moving targets. A lot of these are very subjective. I mean, you might have an 8% growth market, and then a growth prediction, and then a black swan event like COVID hits, and then you as an organization, your entire focus shifts from making growth profits to looking at how do you really make through the next quarter without losing any headcounts. So I think, in my opinion, we should take it with a pinch of salt. This is a very good framework or a process for us to be able to think through how we might want to build our operation strategy. But I think it has its own limitations, and it has its own kind of challenges to be able to work with it.
Yes, sir. Sir, after order winners, if they are bare minimum that we have to provide these requirements and all, they want to be a order winner. I mean, after order qualifiers, if they know.
That's an order qualifier. So
Yes, sir.
typically, an order qualifier would be, what does a customer want? So it's those attributes that must be present for you to be even considered by the customer. And order winners are that would typically win your customer over the others. So when you are looking to buy a pizza, your order qualifier could be that I would want a safe or a hygienic pizza. It should be tasty. Maybe the order winner is that it's an ease of ordering. So it's very easy that I can pick up an app and I can get Domino's pizza delivered to me. Order qualifier for an Uber would be, for any travel vehicle, would be that it should be safe, reliable, and maybe low cost in a market like India. And once that is kind of there, so I will consider Uber and Ola because it meets both these order qualifying criteria. Then the order winner could be ease of use, information tracking, or whatever other thing that might attract me to using a particular service or a particular product as such. So this is very different. It's very subjective, based on industry, based on the thing, and it's also something that keeps moving. Some things that are order winners today, maybe like ease of ordering, will become order qualifiers 3 years down the line, or even as less as 3 months down the line. And people would say, you know what, COVID has struck and we cannot go out, so I will not consider even going out, and ease of ordering becomes an order qualifier in that case. Maybe the order winner becomes something else or some other product that would be that would differentiate the organization from some of its other competitors.
Yes, sir. Sir, I have a doubt. Like, if you consider a McDonald's and Burger King,
Correct.
okay. So in that, we find costs are similar, low cost models they are
Correct.
following,
Right.
and the quick delivery rate and all is the order qualifiers, ease of
Correct.
ordering and all. And the
Correct.
quality of the McDonald's is far better than the Burger King. So it is an order winner. Can we say this, sir?
Yes, you can say this. Order winner could also be location. Maybe
Wide range presence.
maybe it's closer to your house, so that
Yes, sir.
becomes an order winner for you. Or maybe the delivery is easier, or it's faster delivery because it's closer to your house, so that becomes an order winner for you. So when you're looking at a market segment, I mean, as an organization, you will typically want to cater to that, cost conscious customer if you're a McDonald's. And even if you do walk into a McDonald's or a Burger King, they would want you ideally to finish your meal and go out of the restaurant as fast as possible. They wouldn't want you to stay around because it costs them if you are able to, if you actually stick around, and because you are actually taking away the space of a potential other customer. So all of these matrices, so they have an average time in terms of when the food actually arrives in front of you at that counter, till to the average time of how long a person occupies a particular table. And then of course you have variances based on that, but that's really the average. So when you're talking about, coming back to this discussion, these are again differ from industry, differ from a segment in the industry. And what you mentioned about McDonald's and Burger King, it's true. But in the same industry, you will have a fine dine restaurant, or you will have a TGIF or any other brand, which will have a very different order qualifier and winner as such.
Yes, sir. Got it, sir.
So yeah, so these are just things that you need to keep in mind. I mean, after today's class, you possibly, I mean, if you are into hardcore operations, you will probably come across order qualifiers and winners. But more often than not, these are things that that people expect you to know once you are on the shop floor, once you are on the job floor, once you are even in the line ops or in the staff ops, and you're looking at formulating or implementing operation strategy. These are things that people would expect you to usually know and talk in these terms. All right, so distinctive competence, it's really what an organization does better than everyone else. And it's typically, in the case of Southwest Airlines, it could be, your distinctive competence could be the fact that you are always on time, and you're never beyond schedule, and you provide that standardized service, and people know what you expect out of it. And your distinctive competence in the case of Dell would be that it's a low cost product which can be customized to your unique needs. Whatever that distinctive competence is will actually determine your market positioning, will actually determine your operation strategy, will actually come from your corporate objectives as such. All right. Yeah. So we looked at, okay, this is the repetition of the same one. We looked at distinctive competence. We looked at some of the operations objectives which are important for organizations. And I think this comes back again towards the end where we look at it in a slightly more detail. But when we are looking at various operations objectives which organizations are looking to measure and track to be able to improve cost, quality, product variety and customization, flexibility, delivery in terms of timeliness, speed, reliability, after sales service, all of them become your operations objectives. Again, these are not all encompassing. These are just a few initial thought starters. It depends on the organization, depends on the industry. These will change, but these are some of the more popular ones which people use. Typical operations decisions are when organizations have to make, they are between, in terms of the quality, in terms of process, when you're talking about the location, the layout. And typically, if you just think about all of these things in isolation, it might sound a little boring, but if you are able to trace back and think about maybe an example of I don't know, you mentioned McDonald's in this case, so you can think about the product, you can talk about the process, and you will think about the location and the layout. You think about the supply chain in terms of sourcing, inventory, scheduling, maintenance, some infrastructure in terms of HR. All of this will be different. So we looked at, just to kind of sum this up, we looked at the example of Uber, where we typically understood the market segment or the market positioning or the customer persona which they were targeting, typically urban, connected, affluent customers. The order qualifier in Uber's case would be reliable, safe transportation at a reasonable cost, and order winner would be convenience and to be able to track and trace. Distinctive competence for an organization like Uber was it was a two-sided market, which they were able to control very, very well, I would say, because they implemented a lot of initiatives in terms of the rating system, in terms of predictive analytics, in terms of predicting where the demand is going to be, and driving your traffic flow or drivers to be able to pick up that demand, dynamic pricing, frictionless payment. All of these over time became their distinctive competence. And what was distinctive competence maybe 10 years down the line is become pretty much a commonplace or an order qualifier, maybe for all the people in the industry. So they have moved on, and they have established a new set of measures which they believe will keep them differentiated, which will drive their distinctive competence in the future as such. Some of the when we look at Amazon's success, we look at the order fulfillment, the warehousing, cloud computing, data analytics, and again, these are some of the aspects that we look at in terms of typically when we look at Amazon's success. And we spoke about strategic trade-offs. It's very important that in operation strategy you look at strategic trade-offs. That's because you will never be able to please your customers on all fronts. And for example, offering meals on flights to improve the service quality will result in an increased cost and turnaround time. So if you are an organization that provides that kind of service to be able to improve service quality, you will eventually have to make a trade-off in terms of cost. So if you are a Singapore Airlines, you will not, or an Emirates Airlines, you will never be able to provide your customers with maybe a cost-effective option. Versus if you were, say, an Indigo, that's again a strategic trade-off, and that what they believe is that they will want to keep their costs low and standardize a lot of their other offerings to ensure that they are able to provide that kind of perception in the market which they build. Again, there is no right or wrong in this case. It's really your choice as an organization what you decide to keep strategic trade-offs as such. All right. So again, typically when you look at your competitive priorities, they will lie around either cost, quality, flexibility, or delivery, and it depends on structure of the organization in terms of capacity, facility, and technology. You will also look at infrastructure in terms of workforce, quality control, and production planning. Why do trade-offs arise? Because one, product features might be incompatible, but mostly it's because there is an incompatibility between image or reputation, and that is why you will have to make a trade-off. Now, if as an organization like Indigo, if you were to provide the service levels which say would be expected from a Singapore Airlines or an Emirates, that would actually drain your resources. It would put your organization into complete red, which is not something that you would want, and that is why the entire cost of trade-off. Again, this kind of links back on the project management scale, where you have three parameters. You have cost, you have time, and you have quality, and you've got to make a trade-off, and you've got to focus on two key parameters which you would want to focus on, and kind of have a small trade-off on the other. And it's really defining that competitive differentiation that you are playing with. Okay. This is
generally,
yeah.
sir, sorry, sir. Generally, the trade-off will be like if you want to give a quality product, like for example, Rolls-Royce, it will take 6 months to give that kind of quality product, but it will take only few hours to make a Toyota. We can
Okay.
say this like a
Yeah.
quality takes time.
Yes, I get where you're coming from, and I think what you said is true, but may not be the exact case in the case of Toyota. It might not take maybe 6 months, or what you mentioned, 6 days. I'm not sure what the exact amount of time of date is, but I think yes, your thinking is in the right direction when you are actually comparing a Rolls Royce versus say a Toyota. From a very objective perception, if you are a Rolls Royce customer, you would like ultra luxury segments, and when you talk about ultra luxury, you will be able to provide that kind of engine, that kind of seat belts, that kind of safety protocols, whatever it is that comes with a Rolls Royce, which at some level will impact the cost of production, will impact the time of delivery, and all of this will only be possible if you give it that kind of cost, or if you invest that kind of cost, or if you invest that kind of time to be able to build that quality product. If you are building a Toyota, your market segment or your entire focus is to be able to sell x number of cars within say 3 months. If you kind of start investing the kind of time, in your case, the example that you said, to be able to build that product and take that timeline, you will never be able to meet your objectives. And that's a perfect example of the trade-off that you actually mentioned about.
Yes, sir. Instead of going with the Rolls-Royce royalty and all, they can focus on lower budget market and they can speed up the production and get it to the market than waiting and copying or mimicking the Rolls-Royce strategy.
Correct.
Then they have to make a trade-off on speed of delivery than the cost and standards of high risk and all.
Okay, I get what you're saying, and you're right. But only thing what I'm trying to tell you is here is it's not always a black and white. There is an
Yes,
element
sir.
of gray here, because there are a lot of organizations which might want to argue with this thing that we have started reducing this trade-off in a certain element way, because we've started touching on that luxury segment, but maybe in an affordable luxury segment. So, for example, a BMW might want to argue we provide you the best of both worlds. We provide X number of sales during a time period of 3 months, and we kind of provide the kind of luxury which you might want to expect in the Rolls Royce. So there is a bit of like it's the best of both worlds, they can say. And it's really where your technology in or innovation kind of comes into play here. So when you are looking at this trade-off here in terms of timeliness versus service quality, you will be able to improve on that graph, on the graph, or the trade-off graph between both these aspects, by improving the technology level, or by enhancing the technology levels. Typically in this case, when we talk about BMW, or when we talk about a car which is into affordable luxury, you will at some level be able to provide those elements which maybe a Rolls Royce can afford, by improving on some of the technological aspects, or by ensuring that you are able to build perhaps 60% of the same engine, or 60% of the same chassis at maybe 1/10 of the cost. And that is where you are probably kind of reducing the gap or improving on the trade-offs. But you are completely right when you say this example of those strategic trade-offs which organizations have to make.
Yes, sir.
Everyone
Got
with
it.
me?
Yes, sir. Got it.
Okay. Again, when we look at strategic trade-offs, you are, as an organization, you would want to distinguish yourself. There could be three different, I would say, distinguishing factors. You could focus on the cost leadership. So if you, in this case, if you are a Toyota, or I mean, Toyota is not exactly cost leadership, it probably will be a Nano. But if you are an Indigo, you are looking to provide that, and your go-to-market differentiation, or the distinguishing factor, would be the fact that you are able to provide maybe good quality service at affordable prices, and that's your competitive differentiation. In terms of a completely differentiation, when we talk about it, it will probably be another similar market, which is maybe at, say, a private plane, or a charter plane, which someone might want to rent out and be able to travel. So that could be the USP of your organization, and you might not typically be in the same rat race as, say, an Indigo, but your organization might focus on that niche set of players or those niche set of customers which might want custom, flying experience, blah blah blah, whatever other things that you might want to focus on. So again, the idea of this slide is to not talk about Indigo versus whichever other company. The idea is for you to be able to understand or maybe take away specifically how as an organization you would want to differentiate yourself. Again, most successful companies maintain an acceptable level in each area, and each area being customer intimacy, product leadership, and operational excellence. And you have an acceptable level in all three. So customer intimacy, product leadership, and operation excellence, and you become a front runner in any one of them. And that's how you kind of I guess focus on that unique niche or build that unique loyal customer base for your organization, as well. All right, I think once you start building on these, there's something called as cumulative capabilities model. What it really talks about is you start with quality, and then you kind of, once you kind of improve, or you're kind of there in terms of your quality, or you provide an acceptable level of quality, you focus on dependability. When you say dependability, that means that you will now be in the minds of the customer, you already have provided a product with a certain quality. Now you are providing that, this product would last you, maybe 2 years of time before it kind of goes bad. And then once you've established that level of dependability within your organization or within the minds of your consumers, you can focus on speed. And then once you become to that speed, you can actually start focusing on cost. So these are some of the ways, this cumulative capability model, where you might want to kind of, I guess, build on. And once you are looking to do those strategic trade-offs, this is probably the more acceptable approach for your organization to be able to build it. All right, moving on. Yeah. So we looked at a fast food chain like a McDonald's or a Subway, and then we looked at a luxurious sit-down restaurant, something which is a fine dine restaurant, and we kind of explored what are some of the order qualifiers and winners. And just to kind of talk about it, we understood that they have different competitive priorities, and obviously they have different capabilities because they're targeting a different niche of segments. And when you talk about order qualifiers and to attract customers, you're talking about low cost, low price, and competitive capabilities to deliver that low price. In the case of Walmart, will be a cost leadership, and this example company is Walmart. When you talk about Rolls-Royce, for an example, the order qualifiers would be your quality or your comfort level, and to be able to achieve that quality level, so that every Rolls-Royce that actually comes out has to offer that quality which cannot be compromised. The competitive operational I guess strength or competence that Rolls-Royce will have to develop will be its quality control department. Similarly, for Apple, the order qualifiers and winners would probably focus on any of the added features. Again, they will have to focus on innovation, quality improvement to be able to deliver that. For Amazon, if you're talking about fast delivery, the competitive capability which will be needed from an operations perspective will be speed, and so on and so forth. When you're talking about variety, in the case of IKEA, and that's really the order qualifiers, you will need, from an operation standpoint, you will need mixed flexibility to be able to deliver that promise to the market or promise to the customers. Similarly, in the case of Subway, if your order qualifiers or order winners are talking about personalization, and you are saying that, hey, this is maybe a personalized, so I can build the sandwich I want to. What's the competitive capability which you need from an operation standpoint would be the ability to customize your sandwich, and that is how you will structure your internal operations or your internal operations flow. So we looked at trade-offs. Why do trade-offs arise? Strategic focus. We looked at the value disciplines. All right. So we looked at two different operations, when we talk about, you have manufacturing oriented operations, and you do have service oriented operations. And I think this is something that we had discussed in detail, so I'm not going to go over it. But when we talk about typically, the service oriented operations are your more intangible services. It could be maybe the hospital giving you a medical diagnosis, or a root canal, or maybe a TV repair, or a haircut. These are slightly more intangible. And when you talk about manufacturing oriented operations, you will focus on the production of, I don't know, automobiles, or restaurant meals, or salt, or vacation, or whatever else. That those are tangible aspects that your organization can focus on. And a very important aspect we looked at when we speak about tangible and intangible is the example of Starbucks. And when we talk about an organization like Starbucks, we really try and think through what are some of the physical goods and what are some of the intangible services that customers can expect. So when you walk into Starbucks, the physical goods that you can expect definitely is the coffee that you order. But more than that, I think the intangible services that you might expect is maybe the ambience, which kind of propels you. So maybe the coffee in that particular case would be an order qualifier, and maybe the ambience, maybe the Wi-Fi, maybe the music that they play, maybe the smell that you walk into, those freshly grinding coffee beans. All of those can actually be the intangibles which your organization can actually offer. When we talk about challenges for operation strategy, various challenges, but mostly we talk about challenges around inventory, around evolving customer preferences, around employee roles, and how fast those roles are changing. We would also like to focus on an important returns and repairs on an after sales service process. And of course, ensuring dimensions of quality are never really compromised as your organization continues to build on the niche that it has established for itself. All right. So we looked at 2 process choices as well. Guys, I'm going a little fast. It's important that we kind of touch on some of the important concepts here. We just have another 15-20 minutes to go. So I will run through a few of these slides. In case you have any questions, feel free to ask. But we looked at 2 process choices primarily, jumbled and linear. And typically, we looked at an example of a health clinic where it was a jumbled flow, where you had a different flow. If a child was to walk into that health clinic, you will typically have a play area, and then that child will be attended to by a nurse and a doctor, and then maybe he has a lab, X-ray, whatever it is. And in terms of an adult, it will have a different flow already because he does not have a wait area. He might have a waiting area. He might visit the doctor and he might exit. So there is no flow in terms of, or even if there is a flow to the lab or X-ray, he will actually from the wait area go from the lab or X-ray. So this is an example of a jumbled process choice which the hospital chooses to take. We looked at some of the impacts of this process choice in terms of cost, speed, flexibility, quality, and customization. Now, in terms of, because it's catering to both children and adults, it will have a cost imperative to it. This will be very different if that was only a child-only clinic or a pediatric clinic. I'm not sure whether I'm getting the term right. But if it's a child-only clinic, you can save on those costs. You will be able to increase the speed in which you are able to serve those customers who are walking into that clinic, those children who are walking into the clinic. The flexibility you might provide will be limited, of course, because you will only be focusing on one specific niche of the customers, and that also you can have a very specific sub niche in it, that you provide only dental care for children, whatever it is. Again, quality will again depend on the process choice, because if you have a process choice which is linear only for children, and the doctors are kind of trained to do exactly one thing, that will improve your quality significantly, versus if it was a more generic kind of a setup where you had to be examined, and then you had to go through a lab and an X-ray, and then the quality impact would be different. And of course, the customizability and how you are able to offer, or how that health clinic is able to offer its services to its customers, would be completely different if you were if it was a adult only clinic or a child only clinic as such. So again, the idea of this particular slide here is that there is an impact of the process choice based on your overall market positioning, based on the competitive differentiation that your organization has chosen. And on this graph, we really looked at how process flexibility will differ on product variety. And I'm going to skip this completely because we've had a chance to go over it earlier. But this graph really talks about all the way from when you have a high process flexibility and a high product variety, you're just doing one specific project, versus if you were to go all the way from job shop, batch processing, large processing, small processing line, and continuous as such. All right, this is something that we looked at before. Take any fast food chain and a luxurious sit-down restaurant. Which type of process arrangement would you consider food preparation process in a fast food chain restaurant and in the luxurious sit-down restaurant? And typically, we looked at both different things, and we looked at how each of these might have a different process flexibility and a product variety within the same industry. So if you're a sugar refinery, you're looking at a continuous product process matrix here. In this case, you're looking at line operations. If you're a burger in a fast food restaurant, if you're providing burgers, a large batch or a small batch would be typically desserts in a restaurant or individual meals. And then your individual project would be where you have a high level of process flexibility and a high level of product variety, will be a wedding cake or maybe a cake that's actually customized for any one occasion. So again, depending on the kind of competitive capabilities that you order, you will actually be having your internal process mix as such. Okay. We looked at this example. I think we touched on it before earlier right now. We looked at an hospitalization specializing in one particular procedure. We looked at multiple process arrangements in terms of, a bakery making bread or or pastries or sandwiches in a particular, cafeteria. We looked at something called as split processes, where clothing brands might have monogram shirts, which can actually be customized, or you can actually customize a bit of that based on your preferences. And then you eventually have those distinct processes where you actually customize, a Harley Davidson motorcycle to your own unique requirements. So process arrangements typically related to whether it's a product or a process focus, whether it's made to order or made to stock, and depends on the various stages in a product life cycle as well. All right, guys, moving on. Again, these are typically the process thinking that we kind of focused on. Again, this is something very basic, so I'm going to skip over it. This is typically your process map, and these are some of the symbols which you use to draw a process map. You have activity or a task, which is typically a rectangle. Your stock buffering or waiting is your inventory, which is a triangle. And movement or flow is typically by your arrow. And this is the service or a process map example, where you have an order, then it flows into the payment, then you have waiting, then you have a pickup area. So it's just an example of how a process map is kind of drawn and shown. Yes, it's a repetition of the same thing. So guys, all of these slide decks are updated on the Google Drive. Unfortunately, we will not have. I want to go over Little's Law quickly. But yeah, these are some of the process matrices that we looked at. We looked at the throughput time. It's typically the time spent from the start for time spent by a unit in a particular process from the start to the end, right? And we looked at examples of throughput time in terms of it taking 17 hours for an assembly to assemble an SUV in a plant in the outskirts of Kolkata. So I'm sorry, the typical throughput time would be 17.5 hours here, or your throughput time if you were to be passing through a Mumbai-Pune highway, if you pass through a tunnel and it takes you 4.5 minutes to be able to pass through that tunnel, your throughput time, just for an example perspective, would be from the start of a particular process to the end of a particular process would be your throughput time. Different other process matrices we looked at. Apart from throughput time, we looked at processing time. So processing time would involve a single flow unit or a particular batch of flow units that are being processed together. So if it takes 8 cookies taking 12 minutes to bake, so your processing time for 8 cookies would typically be 12 minutes as such. We looked at capacity. So if you are baking 8 cookies taking 12 minutes for your baking capacity in an oven, the capacity for that particular oven would be 40 cookies per hour, or typically 40 divided by 60, that's 0.67 cookies per minute. So that's how you would quantify capacity as such. And if you have 2 ovens, of course your capacity would double, so it becomes 40, becomes 80 as such. We looked at an example. We looked at another activity metric, which is bottleneck, and it typically determines what is the flow rate of a particular process. Again, we looked at how bottlenecks could be removed by adding resources at a particular activity. We looked at an example of bottleneck as such. And in terms of,
Hello, sir.
yeah.
Sir, a small doubt. What is the difference between the processing time and throughput time? Is it the same?
No, it's not the same. Can someone else answer this question? We discussed it in class extensively. Come on, guys. At least someone should pick this up. Yeah, that's processing time. Correct.
So
That's
if
absolutely.
I'm, sir, if it's like a 4 batch of cookies, the processing time will be first batch to till last batch, and the individual batches is the processing time.
Throughput
Yeah, yeah,
time.
got it, sir. Thank
And
you, sir.
the capacity will be how much, what is the capacity, what is the output that you are able to deliver. So in the case of cookies, if you are baking 40 cookies in 1 hour, your capacity of that particular oven is 40. If you have 2 ovens, your capacity becomes 80. Yes. So basically, bottleneck is really the process, the activity which has the smallest capacity. And when you think about it, um, it is that one thing which is kind of impeding a smooth flow to your process as such. So basically, if there could be different bottlenecks in this case, it could be the fact that maybe the baking powder in that for that particular cookie is not arriving on time for the cookie to be made in time, so that will in effect increase your throughput time, increase your processing time, so on and so forth. So that becomes a bottleneck, and this is a very crude example which I'm giving you. Okay, I quickly would want to go over Little's law, guys. Let me just go over it because I think it's important. um, Regarding this processing time, throughput time, we had discussed it in detail in class. What I will do is I will send across an email kind of differentiating both of these, talking about the capacity also, so that you guys have a fairer idea of this. Let's not spend time on this thing. This is something that we had done, and we had an absolute clarity on the same examples. These are the same slides that I'm going over. Yes. कुछ तो बोलो. Okay. Okay, we'll come to flow rate. Okay, when we talk about inventory, what is an inventory? We are talking about that okay, it's typically talking about the activities that make up of a process. This is a wrong slide. I think this is mistakenly put here. Yeah. So when we are talking about inventory, let's look at some of the reasons for carrying inventory. It could be lead time for supply, different processing times, economies of scale. So these are typically why you would want to carry inventory. We looked at inventory classifications based on reasons in terms of cycle inventory, anticipation inventory, safety stock inventory. This is need to protect against certain uncertainties. Again, these are inventory based on stages, raw materials, work in progress, finished goods. Identifying types of inventory. So sandwich shop will have a different inventory. Bakery will have a completely different inventory. Inventories in service businesses will be, for hospitals, would be bandages, syringes, and drugs. Remember, these are service businesses and not product or manufacturing shops. Service businesses like restaurants will have seasoning, placemats, cups, and napkins as inventory. And how you need to prioritize attention to inventory. This is an example that we looked at. Again, I'm not going to go over it. These slides are there on the thing for you to go over and look at it. But when we looked at how do you decide when you need to buy inventory, we looked at two typical questions: what to order and how much to order. And we looked at ECQ, which is how much to order, and reorder point, which becomes what to order. Guys, with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Um, Again, ECQ, when we talk about, these are some of the assumptions that we looked at. When demand rate is known, again, these assumptions are quite impractical, but the idea of ECQ is to be able to give you an understanding of how much to order. And these are typically based on these decisions that we typically look at how much of inventory that we need to stock in our own homes. It depends on these factors: consumption, cost, whether there's a discount running, how much of storage space there is in our refrigerator, what's the spoilage, and when is our next trip to the store, so that we are able to stock up this inventory. All right. How much to order? When we look at when to order is the reorder point. And yeah. Okay, so the reorder point is typically determined by yeah, we are still in ECQ, and this is the formula for ECQ, where we are looking at Q star is equal to 2ds by h underscore, and you have D being the annual requirement, S being the setup cost, H being the holding cost, and we looked at the total cost again. That follows 2DSH under root.
Sir, ECQ, matlab, I mean, it's a economic order quantity, na, sir?
Correct.
But ECQ, what is C stands for?
One second.
EOQ, na, sir, that one?
Yeah, EOQ.
Acha, okay. Both are same only. Okay, sir.
It's EOQ. I wrongly pronounced it as ECQ.
Acha, okay, sir. I thought it's a separate terminology. And okay, got it, sir.
Okay. Can someone quickly explain to me? We just have a few minutes left. Can someone quickly explain to me what is Little's law? And why is it important?
Repeat the question.
What is Little's law and why is it important? Guys, this is going to come in your exam. जो एक्सटर्नल होगा उसमें लिटिल्स लॉ आएगा ही आएगा. ECQ रहेगा ही रहेगा. EOQ सॉरी रहेगा ही रहेगा. That I don't know, yaar. They haven't told us, but I think it's going to be offline. That's my understanding. But irrespective, you have to be prepared. uh, okay, so as a next step, before your exams, before your submissions, please ensure you go over all the presentations that I have shared. Um, from an operations strategy point of view, most of anything that's going to be covered in an operation strategy is there, more or less. I mean, few places it could have been a little more detailed. Few places, maybe there could be a few more examples, or maybe a few more numericals that could have been given. Sure, maybe stuff like Little's law and all. We discussed it, and it's a little unfortunate that that we don't remember it today. But I think it's very important for you to know some of these concepts, because because they form the basis of any operation strategy that you will typically um, formulate. And we looked at different points, not just ECQ. We looked at reorder point, and I will probably need another class to be able to go over some of these things in detail. There was a question around processing time and throughput time. I think we had discussed it in so much of detail. So what I will do is, after this class, let me compile a list of some of the most important concepts, and I will try and put it across in two sheets, so that you guys can actually have it as a ready reckoner in terms of some of these concepts, because these will be relevant to you if you are in operation strategy at any point of your career. And you will not know the fact that throughput is equal to WIP by lead time, or lead time is equal to WIP by throughput. And that's your little law, and that might not, you might not know that this is called Little's law, but this will be so important for you to be able to understand these concepts and to be able to apply that in your real life. So it's not important what Little's law says, or but you should be absolutely crystal clear with some of these concepts around throughput time, around processing time. If someone's going to ask some of these concepts in your sleep, you should be able to tell speak about them, and you should be able to you talk about it. Because once you are in a shop floor, once you are as a line manager or in a staff ops, these are things that people are going to talk to you. This is the language that people speak in operations. And it's important for you guys to be able to understand at least what the other guy is saying, even if you do not have an absolute clarity on what each of these what are the exact formulas. I mean, those things are actually available on books and on the internet, so you can always Google. But on a more conceptual level, you should be clear with a lot of these things. So go over that sheet, that I will kind of summarize some of the key learnings, some of the more important formulas. I will also share more examples on throughput time, processing time, capacity, so that some of us who are still not clear on that can go over it, and be able to, I think, formulate some of our thoughts around it. But once again, guys, these concepts, these frameworks, they're all meant to um, help us guide at a much more practical level. When we talk about things, a lot of these assumptions which these frameworks assume don't really stand true in a practical real life scenario. So there will be more definitely than not, a lot of these will not hold true, but they are meant to provide you with some kind of a framework or some kind of a thought process when you are actually thinking through some of these problems. And that's where the importance of, say, a Little's law, or say some of these throughput time or processing time, all of these lie. And go over all the presentations, go over the kind of summary that I will share with you later today, or maybe early tomorrow morning. And if you guys still have questions, let's get into another call sometime next week, and let's clear this out so that you guys are prepared for your external exams also. Guys, once again, please do not miss on your assignments. There'll be little I'll be able to do if you guys don't submit your assignments. I mean, if it's not great or if it's not up to the mark, I can always come back to you and say that, this is my feedback. These are some of the changes that you need to make. But if you are absolutely not submitting your assignment, then that would become a problem from my end, because I will have to grade you based on that assignment itself.
Yes, sir, we will. Can I send in 1 hour, like before
Yeah.
midnight?
Send it before tonight. That should be fine. Before midnight tonight, or even if you want, just extend it to tomorrow morning. But just send in your assignments.
Yes, sir, sure.
Okay. So guys, just look out for the summary document, and I will be in touch with Shreyas. Shreyas, please feel free to schedule another session next week if there are more questions, and we'll be happy to take some of these concepts, throughput time, processing time, in much more detail. We'll be able to run through some of those examples if there are requirements from students as well.
Okay, sir. I'll ask the class and
Yeah, I mean,
let you.
it has to come from the class. If there are needs, otherwise we can actually schedule this session closer to your external exam, and if that's something that might interest, that should also be fine.
Sir, regarding the external exam, sir, we don't know when it will be happening because in the academic calendar it is written as 17 January, and approximately 8 people from our class are joining Flipkart on
Okay,
the same date, 17th. So it might get preponed or postponed. So we don't have any exact idea about it.
okay. So
Anshul,
noted on that, Shreyas. What I will do is I will also cross check internally, because I don't have a visibility on when the external exam will be.
yes,
But
yes, sir.
most
So we
likely,
also don't know about it still
yeah,
now.
if there are people who are actually joining an organization, like you said, Flipkart, then
Hmm.
I think most likely it will be preponed, or it will completely be online. So I'll have to check. Whatever it is, I will update you, or someone from the college will actually update you. So
Sir,
that should
actually, Anshul is talking regarding it to Arpita ma'am.
okay. Okay, I think that's fine.
So
Even
it
from
is
my
coming.
yeah,
Huh.
even from